This episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
And also by the Pelvic Health Professionals membership site. If you are listening in real time, the doors are open now and for another couple of weeks. If you're wondering what the Pelvic Health Professionals membership site is, this is where healthcare professionals from all modalities, yoga teachers to physical therapists, also known as physiotherapists in Canada, to movement educators, doctors, midwives, doulas, this is where everyone who is interested in anything pelvic health comes together, collaborates, learns together, shares together. We have an up-to-date library of resources, an online private group, monthly Q&A calls, and access to amazing pelvic health experts from around the world. To find out more, visit pelvichealthprofessionals.com. Welcome to episode 130 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. It feels a little surreal when we hit big numbers like this, like episode 100, and then we hit another 10, and here we are at episode 130 together. And I just want to say a huge thank you to anyone who has listened to even a quarter of those. I really value and appreciate your time. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mom of 3, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant who works for yoga teachers. And this podcast was created so that maybe I can help make your life a little bit easier as an entrepreneur, business owner, yoga teacher, so that you can connect to the information and inspiration every single week and feel supported as you navigate these jungles. I know it's a tough gig. And as part of being a business owner is making profit. Some yoga teachers don't like to talk about profit or think about sharing yoga as a business. But for me, I really see this as an important part of being able to bring yoga to others, because you need to be able to sustain yourself first before you can serve others. So yes, a lot of us struggle with talking about money, talking about profit, or making profit, which is why I'm thrilled to be able to share with you this interview with Emily Sussell. Emily not only makes $100,000 a year teaching private yoga full-time, yes, you heard that right, $100,000 a year. But Emily also believes that yoga teachers can easily make $60,000 a year. She also doesn't offer any discounts for her packages. Are you interested yet? Does this sound unbelievable? Emily explains how teaching private yoga can be a niche on its own, how to set up your prices, market yourself, how to use SEO and website branding, and how to overcome your mindset blocks and dive right into teaching private yoga full-time. If teaching private yoga is something you've given even a little bit of thought to, or if you just want to be able to make a decent income as a yoga teacher, this episode and next week's episode is for you. All of our show notes are ready for you at theconnectedyogateacher.com/130 for this episode. There you can find the links that we talk about along with clickable timestamps so that you can go back and click on the topic where you want to start listening again. Huge thank you to Jill Braverman, who left a review. Jill said, "Thank you. Your podcast in general is hands down the most useful and relevant one I've found for actionable and thought-provoking conversations, specifically for yoga teachers." And Jill goes on to say that she recently found us through Emily Sussell's group. So how cool is it, Jill, that you found us through Emily? And today's episode is all about Emily and how she runs a private yoga teaching business and helps others to do the same. So then Jill went on to say, "I can't wait to binge on past episodes. I love the episode about language and have implemented many of the tips I heard there too. Bravo." Thank you so much for sharing this, Jill. Thank you, Emily, for your amazing group. We'll make sure to link to it in the show notes, for connecting yoga teachers to information and for all of the work that you do. Question, Connected Yoga Teacher listener, have you left a review yet? I know some of you are like me when you listen to podcasts and you think, this is great, here's my podcast, and have you left a review? I know that I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I sit back and don't leave a review, But I want to tell you that if you want to give a gift of thanks for this podcast, this is the best way to do it. I love to read your reviews on the podcast, and it also helps others to find the podcast. So tell us what you love about the podcast. Tell us what you would improve. Leave a review either in iTunes or on our Facebook page. Before we hear from Emily today, let's hear our hot tip of the week from the team at Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga teachers. This is Matt with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. One way to make your yoga practice more accessible is to empower potential new students with information and inspiration before they walk through the door. By describing your classes and workshops on Schedulicity, students can educate themselves before choosing the type of yoga instruction that's right for them. They can sign up for a class instantly while their curiosity is piqued and know that a spot will be waiting for them. What better way to start a new yoga journey than by feeling welcomed and included before the class even begins?
Thank you so much, Schedulicity, for sponsoring this podcast, but also for providing an amazing scheduling software that I have been using since 2011. I've been using this as a private yoga teacher, scheduling one-on-one private yoga, and also I used it in a studio that I managed for 5 years. And it is amazing how Schedulicity is growing and adding new features that really serve the yoga teachers in the world. So let's dive in and meet Emily. Emily Sussell is a successful yoga teacher, a business coach, and an entrepreneur. After going through a difficult time in her adolescence, Emily found refuge and self-connection in yoga. After practicing yoga for 7 years as a student, Emily eventually became a certified yoga instructor in 2013. Emily is also the founder of Private Yoga Brooklyn, a premium private yoga service in New York City. As more and more yoga teachers noticed her success and reached out to her for help in creating their own private yoga business, Emily was inspired to start Abundant Yogi Coaching, a business coaching institute for yoga teachers worldwide. In addition to coaching and mentorship services, she offers educational resources and coaching retreats to empower yoga teachers with tools to thrive financially and become more impactful as healers. So let's dive in and meet Emily. Oh, and just a side note, Connected Yoga teachers, some of you will remember that this was a Facebook Live that we had done in our private group for yoga teachers. If you're wondering where that group is, go to the Connected Yoga Teacher homepage and click on the join button. We would love to have you in our Facebook group. And sometimes we have bonuses like interviews going early. So thank you to all of you who showed up live and asked amazing questions. You, along with Emily and myself, made this episode possible. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Emily. It is great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on the show today to talk to us about how to grow a private yoga business because this is your specialty. It's your niche. So tell us, where did your journey begin and how did you get to where you are today?
First of all, thank you again for having me. I'm a big fan of everything that you do. I think your group is fantastic. I think your podcast is amazing. I went and took a class at my local studio yesterday, and a couple teachers that I saw there, they were saying, "Oh, you're going to be on the Connected Yoga Teacher? That's so cool." And it was just very special. So thank you again. And what was your question?
It was, how did you get into yoga? And then how did you get to where you are, like specializing in mostly helping yoga teachers with private yoga?
Okay. And if my responses are just completely run on, feel free to like give me a wink or something, because I am a person who has a lot to say. So I was very young when I started practicing yoga. I was 15, 16 years old when I took my first yoga class. I grew up in New York City, and I grew up in a sort of like time and moment and corner of Brooklyn, New York, where yoga was already like very much a thing. And so it was kind of like unavoidable. It was like everyone was doing yoga. And I got deeper into it when I was in college. And when I graduated college, I was sort of, like anyone in that weird place of like, well, now what? Am I going to get a job? Am I going to go, create some kind of career? And, I had been a speech language pathology major in college. I was thinking of doing speech therapy. I would have, gone on to do that as a master's degree. And I just loved yoga, and it was all I wanted to do. It was like I was just living it. I wanted to go to yoga every day. I just wanted to talk about yoga all the time. I was reading all the books, and I signed up for teacher training. And it was, like for anyone who signs up for teacher training, I think there was no real sense at that point, is this going to be my career, or is this just something that I'm exploring right now? And it just kind of naturally evolved into being my career. I taught in studios, I taught group classes, I taught a lot of kids yoga. I worked for 3 years in an after-school program teaching at-risk youth, doing yoga as like an after-school activity. And where the private practice really came in, and I tell this story all the time. This story is just like so central to everything that I do, and I like to be really open about it, which is blatantly that I couldn't pay my bills. So I was struggling. I was piecing it together. I was doing what I like to call like group class hustle. And, I was working in like 6 or 7 different places. My taxes were like an absolute mess. I was like, the preparation fee I was paying was insane because I had so many forms, studios, gyms, the after school program. I was picking up any like part-time work that I could here and there. Most of it was yoga related. Occasionally I was kind of stepping outside of yoga and movement, but yoga was the main thing. And I kind of had my first private client. It was a friend of my mom's. And I fell in love with everything about working one-on-one with somebody in their home. I liked, coming from like working with a big group of kids in a classroom where it was like kind of chaotic and loud and rowdy, to just working one-on-one with an adult in their home where it was quiet and peaceful and lovely. I fell in love with that, and it just suited me. And between loving it and seeing that there was just so much more possibility for, becoming completely self-employed, for building my own business, for making really as much money as I wanted to make, I started to see it as a more scalable business than being an employee at lots of different places. That was when there's so many different versions of this story, and my mind is starting to go into like, well, there's more to it than that, but we'll get there. And I started to see that was the direction I was going to go. It was not poof, magic, snap your fingers, and now I have lots of clients. There was a lot of struggle, and I'm sure that will come up today too.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing also that there was this struggle. I think this is such a common thread with yoga teachers, especially if you're like you said, running to many different places, teaching all kinds of things, all different spaces, and not really this clear and focused, like this is the thing that I do. So when you got to the place of teaching just private yoga, what was the biggest thing that allowed you to shift from, okay, I teach group yoga, now I specialize in teaching private yoga?
One of the things that helped me make that transition was honestly like deciding to. It was like I had to really decide it. I had to decide that it was really what I was doing. I had to sort of make a commitment to it. It was easy at the time. I was like in my mid-20s. It was easy at the time to just be pulled in lots of different directions with things. Like I'm also like a multi-passionate, multi-talented person. There was a lot of like different directions I could go, both within yoga and outside of it. But I realized that if I didn't choose something and commit to it, then I was just going to stay in this place of vagueness. And, of course, what comes to mind here is like a lot of doubt came in, a lot of imposter syndrome came in, and I know so many people can relate to that. And it was like I knew that if I was going to accomplish it, that I had to keep choosing it, even though there was doubt, and even though there was imposter syndrome, and even though there was fear.
That's amazing. I think that's so common as well. I hear from a lot of yoga teachers like, oh, I'll need to build up into teaching private. And so it's good to hear from you what your personal experience with that was. So then I feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like when you make that shift and you decide, okay, I mostly want to work one-on-one with people, there's this whole like setup, like you said, like you need to be focused. And so there are things like, how do people book with me? Where do I book them in? What do I set my prices at? Or how do I create a really good intake form? Do you have some tips for us around the beginning things that we should think about?
Yes, of course. Yeah. And those are the kind of questions I get constantly, of course. And those are the kind of things we're talking about all the time in my group on Facebook. What I'll say is, it's really good to have someone in your life that you can bounce those questions off of, like in live time. When I was in the very early phases and figuring it all out, I was very lucky to have my then boyfriend, now fiance. We're getting married in October. He was more experienced than me in business and entrepreneurship. And he had already built himself a coaching practice, doing love and relationship coaching and it was a client-based practice. And so it was, I'll say it was so important for me to have that person that I was able to ask questions as they were coming up, and not just like somebody to ask questions, but somebody that was like really, really supportive of what I was trying to do. So that was huge. And I really encourage like everyone who's listening, like have a mentor, have a coach, or at the very least, like surround yourself with people, surround yourself with people who are also doing it, be part of a group, like people are in your group, in my group, have that support, have that network or person in your life who you can talk these things out with.
Oh, I really like that because I think that sometimes we are just sitting alone by ourselves as a yoga teacher. And so often society doesn't recognize a yoga teacher as a professional. Or even we don't as yoga teachers. If we go to introduce ourselves, sometimes we say, oh, I'm just a yoga teacher. Or people say, what do you do? Like, you just kind of like do yoga all day. Mm-hmm. So I think that's so key. And you said also that your fiance mm-hmm. had a real business background. And so sometimes we need to look outside of the yoga world. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And then because I know you were kind of asking more about like those nuts and bolts, like how did I approach those nuts and bolts? Like, I also want to say that, of course we can always like go to the groups and see what other people are doing, or we can talk to a coach or a mentor and like ask them. But I think what's so important is to like, I attended an event for entrepreneurs the other day, and there was a speaker, and he used the phrase motion over meditation, which is kind of funny because we're yoga teachers and we like to meditate, right? But he was saying, like, don't get stuck when you're building a business and you're trying to move forward with growing something. Don't get stuck in that place of constantly meditating. What's the best way to do this? I can't really go forward until I have it figured out, but instead to just stay in motion. Also, I love Marie Forleo. I don't know if you know her. She does B-School.
Yes.
And she always says this. I love this. Start before you're ready. Start before you're ready. Like, even if you don't have all of those things figured out, like figure them out as you go. And it's also like, it's okay to appear to your prospective clients, to your clients, like a person who's still figuring things out. I think people are afraid to have a discussion about rates because they don't know exactly what their rates are yet. I would say maybe one of the best ways to approach that is just like, start talking with a prospective client about it and just try a number and see what happens, and be willing to improve it as you go forward.
Right. Okay. This is so good. I love how you said start before we're ready, because honestly, I have not worked with anyone who doesn't feel some sort of fear when we go to dive into whatever it is, like an online course or teaching private yoga or niching down anything business wise. I don't know if we ever feel like, oh, yeah, I've got all my ducks in a row. I'm ready.
We're never quite ready. And yeah, I think, exactly. It's start before you're ready. It's that simple.
Right. Okay. And so then let's talk about some of the things that you would ask someone to consider. So if we look at how people book with you and pricing. So maybe let's focus in on the price. Do you have any secret magical mathematical equation for this?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask that, because I do have something that I sort of consider an equation, and I kind of consider it like the only equation you will ever need to figure out your prices for anything. But it's not math. Okay, so and I say it constantly in my group. And I say it constantly to the people that I do one-on-one mentoring with. It's you need to ask yourself, what is the rate at which you can show up feeling really excited to be there and leave feeling completely nourished by the exchange? Okay, so
Right.
and then obviously there's so much more to say about that, and I think when teachers are newer, it's a little bit like, well, I'd be excited to teach no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
And for the newer teachers, I would say try to look into the future a little bit, and kind of try to like put on the shoes of, once I've been doing this for a few years, then what would the rate be that I would show up feeling like really excited to be there, really like ready to do my best work possible with somebody. And Shannon, I'm not saying that it isn't possible to show up excited and do great work without pay or without high pay. But I am saying that in the bigger picture of having a business, like it's not always possible to do that. We can't always show up and work for free. It is possible to work into your business model something like a sliding scale, something like, okay, one time a week I do a donation-based thing. But the equation is more for like the bulk of your time of what's going to create your annual income.
Right. And I hear you talking online a lot that it is possible to make a good income from teaching yoga and teaching private yoga. Can you give us some insight into what that might look like? So if we're showing up and we decide that, yeah, this is the price that I've set and I feel good with this. I know it depends on everyone's area, like what your expenses are and all of that. But can you give us an example, because you work with a lot of yoga teachers, of what an average income might be?
Yeah, sure. Like annually, or
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I have no secrets. I'll just be completely transparent about my own finances. I have a video where I share what like a $7,000 month looked like for me in private yoga. So my annual income for 2018 was just under 100 grand. And that was partially private yoga and partially some of the coaching, mentoring stuff that I'm doing. But like an average month for me these days in private yoga is around 7,000-8,000, and then you want to factor in like time off. My clients are away sometimes, I'm away sometimes. So I think that, it, of course, like you said, it depends where you are. It depends on your, and then we're also talking before taxes, but I think it's definitely doable that pretty much like anyone, anywhere could earn like at least 60 grand annually if they were focusing exclusively on their private practice. And I think a much higher number is absolutely possible than that.
Right. I think this is really key. And I love that you just brought in the numbers right away.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be so great if we can start sharing, what am I making as a yoga teacher? Or what do I need to make to cover my expenses or to be self-employed? So to be having that money conversation is amazing. Thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any tips on how to attract the people who are going to pay that? Because it's not for everyone. Some people are like, I can go to the Y and it's included in my membership, or it's only $8 or $10. So why would I pay like $100 to $150 an hour for your class? So how do we attract those people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's, of course, a question that comes up a lot and that I have a lot to say about. So one of the things that comes to mind is around like branding. So I talk about this a lot. Like when I was working on sort of developing the brand of Private Yoga Brooklyn, which is what I call my private practice, I really did a lot of work around customer avatar or client avatar, which I think most people listening are somewhat familiar, but it's this concept that like when we're creating marketing, we're not trying to appeal to everyone, right? If you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. The idea of the client avatar, the customer avatar, is you're getting as specific as possible, kind of taking the people that you would work with, who would hire you, and kind of smush them into like one avatar of a person. And so I did a lot of work on that and got clear on who that person would be. And when I created my website, privateyogabrooklyn.com, I created it with that person in mind. And on every level. So the colors, the copy, right? Like the language I used, the images. I made sure that the images represented the kind of person that the person who I'm teaching in the photos actually is one of my clients. And I thought to myself, I would love to have more clients like her because she's one of my favorite people to work with. She's fantastic. And, the rate that she's able to pay is nourishing to me. And so I put her right in the images. And so, the branding should speak to the people that you're trying to attract.
Right. And within this branding as well, does that include niching down and specializing, or does it need to? Do we need to do that?
I mean, I always feel a little bit like here and there when it comes to niching. And I know you talk a lot about niching, and I believe that niching is great. I love that you talk about that a lot. I think niching is powerful, and it serves the teacher because it gives them more of a focus, and it's like dharana, it's like a focus, it's drishti, it's like, where are you looking? Like we're not doing everything. And it serves the client because they're more able to find the person. So, at the same time, like I've also played with this idea that like, and you said it yourself at the beginning of this talk, that private lessons can almost be a niche in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed the opportunity for that when I sat down. This was like before I created my thing, before I built my brand. I sat down at my computer and I just thought like, okay, I'm a person, I'm looking for one-on-one lessons. I'm in New York. I sit down at Google and I type in like private yoga lessons. And I looked at what came up, and what I saw was not much actually. And I was kind of like, my jaw dropped. I was like, wait a minute. I'm in New York City. I'm in the center of the universe and like the most, bustling metropolis of the world. And I saw some teachers and I knew some of them, and I was like, oh, awesome. Good for them. Like they're coming up at the top. But when I looked at their website, like it was like a yoga teacher's website with like a page about private lessons. And I just saw this huge opportunity. I was like, oh, like I could just create a service that is specifically about the personalized one-on-one experience. And so I'm like, do I have a niche? Don't I? I certainly, I niche in the private instruction. I don't teach everyone. But yeah, did that answer your question?
It did. And then I feel like, well, I love how you brought in the brand and how teaching that one-on-one yoga could be the niche in itself, and how you had this student in mind. So that it all worked in together of like your mindset of this is the thing I'm going to do. I would encourage our listeners to Google like private yoga in their area and see what pops up, because I am surprised as well. I just thought in New York you would have that pop up.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question around the pricing of, do we supply packages or do we tell people that they get a reduced rate if there's a group of 2 or 3? Like, how does that play into the pricing as well?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I do is I do an intro session with the person, and I kind of feel it out. And if I can tell from the intro session that we are like definitely a match and they're totally in, and it feels just like mutually like, yes, we're working together, I might go right to a package there and then. And my packages are just usually packages of 10. I don't personally offer discounts on them. In general, I don't offer discounts unless they're requested. So people ask about this all the time. There seems to be this assumption that if it's a package, it should be discounted. I have done it that way. And I got to a point where I realized, like, I think it'll depend who you're working with, but I realized that about my clients, that they're not really like discount shoppers. They're not really looking for a discount. I didn't need to give discounts as incentive for them to buy the package. I realized that. And once I realized that, I just said to myself, like, these discounts, they're hurting my sales, because I'm also paying taxes and I'm also paying expenses. And like, when I chop off more of my income with these discounts, like it adds up. And if I don't need to give them, then why? It reminds me of Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements.
Mm-hmm.
I love don't make assumptions. And
Right.
This is a great example of that. Like, if don't assume that somebody needs a discount, right? And don't assume that the only way they would buy a package is if you offered it with a discount. It does require that you like take a little risk and try just selling something at full price. And maybe that's a little bit uncomfortable, right? Sometimes I think we give a discount because it feels safer, because it feels like we're less likely to be rejected or something. But yeah, I don't give discounts unless they're requested. If they are requested, I check in with myself, and I check in with how busy am I right now, and how much would the discount kind of hurt my business, if at all. And I might give it, and I might say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not able to.
Oh, this is good. And I also love how you use that first session with someone to get to know, is this also a good fit for me?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good, because we're not a good fit for everyone and they're not a good fit for us. And there's some other teacher or some other offering that will, suit them best if we don't feel the fit.
100%. And sometimes if it doesn't feel like a fit, I refer. I'm starting to expand Private Yoga Brooklyn to have more teachers than just myself. So there's this, if I meet somebody, and even if it's simply that like their home is too far from my home, and I feel like getting there is just like going to be difficult for me each week, then I'll go and I'll meet them, and I'll figure that out. And once I've met them, I can say like, okay, you doing yoga, this is going to be great for you. I can't work with you, but I have somebody great for you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And so when you offer the package, it sounds like it's more about them committing to more classes. Is that right? It's the same price, but do they purchase it ahead of time and they're committed?
Yeah, it's all about commitment. I mean, the reason, like, why do I do packages? It's it's a number of things. It's commitment for them, which is important for yoga practice. Like it's the difference between just dropping in every now and then to the group class and having the monthly class pass. It's commitment. It's better for my finances to have more money up front. It's better for my bank account. And it's also just like one less thing to do in the session. If payment is part of it every single time, like it's just one less thing. I don't have to worry about reminding them. They don't have to remember.
Yeah, I can tell that you've done a lot of work around money mindset and with this. So thank you. It's so good for us to hear like this is possible and it's possible to make a living and to continue to serve. Like you said, you're expanding. So that means that you're hiring other teachers and you're helping more people. This is amazing. Was there a point of transitioning from group to private? Was there a point of like, oh, I should hang on to these group classes because that's where I meet people and get in front of them?
Great question. I get it all the time. So I'm going to share this. This is fun. I have never, ever gotten a private client from my group classes. Not of the, I've maybe worked with like 20 to 30 private clients over the past few years. I don't think a single one was directly a student from a group class. I think I did maybe once or twice do a private with somebody who was a friend or a relative of somebody from a group class, but none of those ever became long-term clients. So, yes, I did go through, should I hold on to my group classes? But no, it was not because I thought it would help me reach more private clients. I held on to group classes for a while because I liked teaching them, because I was learning a lot from teaching them, and because I felt committed to them. It was just something I was doing. I'm currently not teaching groups. That's recent. I was teaching one yin yoga class that I absolutely adored for many years, and it was a Sunday afternoon. And it was like one of these things I was so torn about, should I keep it or should I give it up? But I was just ready to have the weekend be the weekend again. So
Right.
I gave that up. I'm not, it's not that I'm not planning to ever teach groups again. It's not like I'm like, yay, no more groups. I would like to teach groups again. I'm just kind of taking a break from it right now. It's not my focus right now.
Right. Okay. That's so good to know. That got me thinking, you're right. I don't know that I've ever booked someone from a group, mostly from workshops, I would say, because then people hear the information and then say, how can I work with you further? Where do you think where do you get in front of your potential students the most? What is the most effective in terms of marketing and visibility?
Yeah, for me, I would say it's my website. I did a lot of work on my website. I worked with a really great web designer who is also the photographer who took the photos. And we did a lot of work on search engine optimization. And, it comes up at the top of a search, which is huge. And it's not just about that though. It's like it's gotta be both. It's gotta be both like search engine worthy. And once you're in the site, it's a beautiful site. It's client focused or customer focused is kind of like the marketing language. It is a website that I made for my prospective clients to find me and figure out if I'm the one for them. And I made it as easy as possible for them to reach out to me. It's not a website it's not a typical yoga teacher website, right? A lot of yoga teacher websites, I would say they're business focused, or not business focused, but they're teacher focused. They're putting the teacher in the spotlight. So privateyogabrooklyn.com was all about putting the client and their needs and what they're looking for and what sort of problems they're looking to solve in the spotlight.
This is so key. Anyone who is about to do a website, overhaul or just a little, every once in a while it needs a refresh. Your About Me page is really not about you. It's about your students. And I look back at mine and I'm like, oh, wow, I need to edit that. That sounds a lot like all the trainings I took or all of the things I did or my yoga journey. And unless it ties in with my students, it's not as helpful. That's so good. So your website you feel is number one. What are some of the other ways that we can attract our private yoga students?
Definitely, yeah. I always say, like, have yourself listed on as many places as you can online. Business listings, like Google business listing, a Yelp listing. When we're listed in all of these places, they like reinforce each other. It sort of strengthens your web presence, and it helps all of your listings sort of rise up to the top. You want to have great reviews on all of these places. And I don't want to put in anybody's head that online is the only way to get clients at all. I have gotten a lot of my clients that way. So a lot of them have also come through referrals from each other. And I really like to share this, that though I didn't build my business this way, it is entirely possible to build your entire practice without ever going on the computer. It really is.
Right.
I mean, the computer helps, but my fiance's coaching practice is entirely referrals from people that he goes out and he meets people and he speaks confidently about what he does. And they flock to him and they refer to him, and he does such amazing work with people that they just refer him to everyone.
Thank you for that. What does it look like? A lot of our yoga teacher listeners have been asking, what does a one-on-one session look like? So you talked about the initial meeting this person. What does an average class look like for yours?
Yeah, it's great. The biggest thing I want to say about that to everyone is, like, don't overthink it. I think that this is like a motion, not meditation. A good example of that is because I hear yoga teachers getting a little bit worked up over, like, how is it different from a group class? Like, should I have a sequence or should I not? I would say this is what inside one of my sessions looks like, and I'll just tell you what my session this morning was like. So it was an 8 a.m. session. I work with her before she starts her work day, and I come in. She's still having her coffee. We sit down on the ground. She's on her mat. I'm sitting in front of her, and we're chatting. We're checking in. I always ask in the beginning, like the main questions I ask are, how are you feeling? How's your body feeling? I'm just checking in, and I would never start a session without like a good 5-minute, just like face-to-face check-in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, I mean, maybe it's my style, but I believe that that's actually what helps. I think that's what helps build those long-term relationships. I think that's why my clients work with me long-term, is that I don't just come in, teach the yoga and leave so much. I come in and I connect with them as a human being. My heart's open. How are you? And then as far as, like, everyone always wants to know, to sequence or not to sequence. If you're a newer teacher, have a sequence no matter where you're teaching, right? Like, whether it's a group or a private, come in prepared with a really clear idea of what you want to teach. Do I personally always bring a sequence to work with my clients at this point? No. Sometimes it's just like, it's so similar as with groups. It's sometimes I do have one. Sometimes it's more of a theme. Sometimes it's more of like a couple things I want to explore. But more than anything, because it is one-on-one, when I check in with them and ask them, how are you? It's like in that check-in that I'm tweaking the plan, changing the plan, throwing something out the window. So then I do a session. I always do Shavasana, of course. Shavasana is still just as important in private sessions. I did once have somebody ask me, like, do you still do Shavasana? I was like, yes, of course. It's the best part. And at the end, I always do like a checkout. Like, how was that for you? How are you feeling now? Anything you want to share? And then, like, same time next week.
Right.
Yeah. Like the therapist, right? So same time next week.
This is so good. And I love how you brought in like be prepared, have something there. And then it really is that check-in time. I find the same thing when I work one-on-one with people. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Sometimes with people, we're building towards, doing the sequence and working on a sequence that's designed for them, customized to them. And other people are completely different. Some people are like, I want to learn as many different yoga poses as possible, in our whatever I do packages of 4, or they're working towards a specific goal. Like I want to be able to get down, sit on the floor, and then get back up again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. It's all about like learning about them in the beginning. And yeah, if there's like a thing they're working on, then the sequences are going to focus on that. Absolutely.
Great. So what would you say if we're thinking that we want to gravitate towards or book more one-on-one yoga? Maybe we're a new teacher or maybe we're an experienced teacher. Where do you think we should begin? Should we start to practice on some friends? Should we, just get in there and start trying to find people to sign up with us? What would be like, okay, here's the first step. Let's do this.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking like somebody who's new teacher, has never taught a private client. They want to like take the first step towards growing private clients.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to say, like start doing one-on-ones with friends. You could totally do that. It's like a great way to, give yourself that experience of teaching a one-on-one to feel what that's going to be like to do it with a person who will pay you for it. Just like your TT had you teach class before you teach classes at the studio. Absolutely. Yeah. Like get some experience teaching people one-on-one. And then I would say, but like don't hesitate too long to get somebody in the door as your first real client. You could get somebody in the door at a discounted rate if that makes you feel more comfortable about feeling it out. I think like some of the best clients for that are like, if your parents are of any age really, depending on the age that you're comfortable working with. But my very first private client, it was a friend of my mom's. And it was such a nice way to just like work with somebody that was, not really family, not really a friend, but somewhat connected. And I charged her like a third of what I charge now. And she knew that I was new at it and that I was figuring it out. And it was a beautiful way to keep practicing and like get into the flow of actually teaching somebody one-on-one as a regular thing. And to have the experience of being paid for it. And even with the discount, I was still making much more than I was making in studios at the time.
Right. Oh, this is so good. And I think, be prepared to show up not, you can't have 10 years of experience until you start, year one. And I'm sure you look back and think, wow, I've really grown and learned so much along the way. And we can't get that through reading a book, even taking a teacher training. It's the dive in. Yeah. Connected Yoga Teachers, I'm popping in here for a moment because Jenny had an amazing question during our live about client intake forms and insurance. And I want to let you know that we have a podcast episode, an article, and also a form for you in our show notes. So there's a waiver form that you can use and print out. There's an insurance episode that we did with Beth McVie. It's really centered on Canadian insurance, but definitely it lets you know the questions to ask any insurance company worldwide. And also we have an article on insurance thanks to a poll that we did in our Facebook group where a lot of you shared your thoughts and your feelings on the insurance companies that you have now. This has been so packed. Thank you for saying yes to a live interview and for giving us so much information. I think that I've got lots out of this, and I already teach one-on-one yoga. So I know that our listeners will have more questions for you. Where can they find you? Because I'd love for you to share your Facebook group and your website.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to find me. My Facebook group is Mastering the Biz of Private Yoga, and it's a really wonderful resource, wonderful community. My website for the work I do with teachers is abundantyogicoach.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. And thank you to everyone who showed up here live, asked amazing questions. It's been fantastic.
Thank you so much, Shannon. This is really great. And I'm, again, just honored to be featured. And I think you're fantastic. And I appreciate all the amazing stuff that you do for teachers.
Thank you. Okay, take care, everyone. Well-connected yoga teachers, how was that? What are your key takeaways? I want to share a few of mine with you, and I would love to hear from you. Either tag me in our Facebook group or leave me a voicemail. You can do that from our homepage. There's a button over on the right. I love getting voicemails. Not many people send them, and I can tell you that I will be sure to send you one back. I'm old-fashioned. I like voicemails. I like calling places. I like calling companies instead of sending an email. That's why I'm a podcaster. Okay, so some of my key takeaways here was that Emily talked about the first thing that helped her to profit as a private yoga teacher was deciding on one direction, even when she was feeling the pull towards so many things. And through the doubt and the fears, she niched down. I want to tell you just from my own experience, the moment I can focus in on one thing is the moment where things really start to move forward fast. And I know as a yoga teacher over many years, I wanted to do all kinds of different classes. And I think I was just learning what I liked and didn't like. So one question that I would ask you to ask yourself, one question I would give to you here in this, if you're struggling at all with niching down, is let go of trying to do anything for a moment and just ask yourself, what would be the next thing to go off my list in terms of teaching yoga? Maybe you have a class that you teach at the Y, one that you teach at a studio, a prenatal class, as well as a restorative one. And so just look at your whole schedule of the classes and the offerings that you have and just think, if I was going to take one away, what would it be? Not that you have to do anything today, but then you can slowly do this. I do this in my own business a lot. Another key takeaway is Emily stressed the importance of having a mentor or a coach for support. I think this is an amazing piece of advice. I think that this is where I really see the traction in my own life and my own business when I reach out for support, when I feel stuck or challenged. Another key takeaway was motion over meditation. Emily talked about starting before you feel ready, and don't be afraid to improve it as you go, and be honest with your audience that that's where you're at in the journey. Motion over meditation. So is there some place right now in your business where you're not feeling ready and you feel like if you just get these ducks in a row, then you will feel ready? And I want to tell you that there are so many times where I don't feel ready, but jumping in and figuring out as I go is one of the best things I've ever done. Another key takeaway that I got from this episode with Emily was no discounts. And I take a deep breath here because I know that I need to move to this in my own business. I've been selling packages at a discount. I sell 4 classes at a discount, and Emily really made me think about this. So I will try and keep you posted and let you know how it goes. I want you to know that I am freaking out slightly because I'm also looking at raising my rates. And I know that my sessions, my one-on-one sessions with people are worth more now, and it is still tough to raise my rates. So all of that said, look at where you can raise your rates. When are you raising your rates? And see, do you want to be giving discounts? Does that feel like a good fit, or does it not feel like a good fit? The last key takeaway is an actionable step. Emily brought this up, and I just want to see if you haven't done this already, please do it. If you are interested in teaching private yoga in your area, Google it. Google private yoga and Google the name of your closest town or city and see what comes up. I love how Emily shared that barely anything at all came up in New York City. So tell us, does something come up in your city? And if not, the opportunity is there. Let me just clarify. The opportunity is there anyway. Even if you do see someone else sharing private yoga, they can never teach yoga like you can. So I want to hear from you if you are motivated to dig in, niche down, and teach more private yoga. Next week, I'm going to be back here outlining exactly how I put this together when I teach one-on-one yoga. I didn't realize this was a thing that yoga teachers wanted to know about until I was leading a teacher training, and this is one of the questions that came up. And I just thought it's not information that people want to know, like how I run my one-on-one session, but it turns out a lot of you want to know about it. So that will be episode 131 next week. If you're wanting to connect with me more, especially around the topic of pelvic health, there are two ways that you can do that. First of all is that the doors are open now if you're listening live to the Pelvic Health Professionals membership site. To find out more about that, go to pelvichealthprofessionals.com. Also, there are just 2 spots left in the Yoga for Pelvic Health in Meaford, Ontario. This is an in-person training. It's the last one that I'm doing of 2019. It's November 2nd and 3rd, and it would be amazing to connect with you there and to share and learn. And I get so excited about sharing yoga for pelvic health, and I would love to see you there. If you have questions about either one, please reach out to me. Thank you so much to our team, Samantha, Suzanne, Crunch, and Cindy, for making today's episode possible, and so many other things. So many other things behind the scenes. Thank you also, dear yoga teacher listener. I know that you are out there and you are doing the hard work of running a business and teaching yoga, caring for others. Maybe you're caring for pets, friends, family, and I hope that you also have time to care for yourself. I would love to hear that you are staying connected to yourself, to your practice, and to your community so that you can really share the yoga that lights you up.